I just wanted to come here today and give my personal support and that of my party to the campaign. I think it's sad in a way that we have to even bother to do this. So I thought we had won the arguments. We know that more than 80% of the people in the United Kingdom are against the hunting of live mammals, and I thought we had won that argument. It saddens me very much that one of the great political parties of this country has now decided that this will become an election issue and is pledged not just seems pledged not just to weakening the Hunting Act that was passed in the British Parliament, as was the threat a couple of years ago, but actually repealing it altogether and giving free license to people to torture and exterminate living creatures in the name of sport and pleasure. I find that sickening. I think it's something we have to stand against, and I can assure you that we will. When we as a group of SNP parliamentarians met to discuss this, when it came up just under 2 years ago in the House of Commons, and there was a suggestion that we would bring forward amendments to the Hunting Act, we obviously had to do some soul searching ourselves, because we know the matter was devolved to Scotland, and there was perhaps a political or a moral argument that we should not interfere and try and influence the legislation in England when we already had the opportunity to make our different legislation in Scotland. We took the view that we should interfere and that we should try and make sure that the attempts to weaken the Hunting Act were resisted, for two simple reasons. One is that the question of animal welfare is not something that is constrained by borders. It is something that is an international issue. And just as we would want to vote and take action to protect animals throughout Europe or on a global scale, so we want to protect them across this island. But the other reason why we took that decision is because whatever happens at Westminster will create the conditions which will affect the implementation of the legislation in Scotland as well. And even at that time, the SNP was pledged to reviewing the legislation with a view to closing loopholes and tightening it up. And if we had seen the legislation weakened in England and in Wales, then that would have made that process all the more difficult. So it is entirely consistent with wanting to achieve the end of hunting in Scotland that we should vote to try and make sure that the position is strengthened in England and Wales. And that is what we will try to do if and when it comes up again. Now you may know of course that the Conservative government has changed the procedures of the House of Commons, which means that any Scottish MP may be curtailed from actually voting on certain aspects of the legislation if it is ruled and certified that it does not apply in Scotland. I guess that those in the Conservative Party that wish to see this Act repealed will try very hard to use those standing orders and try to make sure that this is a matter on which we are forbidden to vote. And I tell you here today that we will resist that every step of the way and campaign to make sure we have the right to express our views on behalf of our constituents in the House of Commons. And I actually challenge the Conservative Party and the Conservative government, if it is to be re-elected, not to try and do this by the back door, not to try and use standing orders and procedural mechanisms to fix the vote, but to allow, if it's going to be a free vote on the floor of House of Commons, then allow a free vote for every parliamentarian, because I am convinced if that happens, then we will have a majority, even used with some colleagues inside the Conservative Party, to make sure that this barbaric practice is not reintroduced, and to then go forward and try and toughen up the legislation and make sure that when we voted, as we did, to ban hunting in this country, that is actually given effect and people are not allowed to frustrate and break the law. That is what this demonstration is about. I commend you for it, and I think we have a fight in our hands, but I'm sure we can win it.